Hi, everyone, and welcome in. Tonight, we are bringing you part 3 of our 4-part conversation series entitled Transformation Through Communication, Conversations with a Woman's Best Friend. Thank you all for joining us here, and for those who do not know me, my name is Crystal Fry, and I am a woman's best friend. As a personal identity coach, I specialize in transformation through communication. And whether it's with yourself or a spouse or a partner, really any relationship, all transformation starts with communication. And that's why we're here. Our conversation tonight is focused on law enforcement and how we can work together. And I am very honored to have our special guest here with us tonight, Richland County Sheriff Lott, here to share his thoughts and talk about the important relationship between communities and law enforcement. And so with that, Sheriff Lott, I will turn it over to you to tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you. Glad to be on with you and your listeners. I'm very excited about this. Communication is the key to everything. So I've been in law enforcement for 45 years, the past 24 as Sheriff of Richland County. And I think, one thing that I can relate to is I have a 16-year-old daughter at home. And so, I have a teenager, and communications with her is very important personally, but also on the job. I think communications is essential to everything that we do. And that's how you build relationships. And I think it's very important in, not only today, but in the past and in the future, relationships is what everything's built upon. And sometimes when we don't have relationships, we have issues. And I think that's probably contribute to a lot of the issues that we've got going on in different parts of the country now is that, people have not communicated. Law enforcement has been guilty of that for so many years. We didn't want to listen to the community. We just wanted to be the ones to say, this is what the problems are and this is the solution, and not listen. And we've tried to change that at Richland County. I think that's one of the reasons why we've been successful is that we've built a strong foundation of relationships and communication. And it's paying off now where you have unrest and problems in other parts of the country. You don't see that in Richland County because the communications and relationships that we've built for so many years. So, again, just go back to what you said, communications is essential to everything that we do. And that's personally and professionally and everything that you do with people and with yourself. Be able to talk to yourself. I think that's important. You have to have a relationship with your own mind and your own body and listen to your mind and body sometimes and then talk back to it. And I know that might sound crazy, but I think it's very important that you do that internally.
I couldn't agree more. I have many conversations with myself, and they are two-sided conversations. I do ask and answer questions. Again, I know that might sound a little off, but sometimes I come up with some pretty good solutions. So, but you're right. Going back to what you said, there's a lot that has happened in a very short amount of time as we kind of look out globally. What are you seeing in the community right now? What's the atmosphere like here in Richland County?
Well, Richland County is looking at other places and saying, why is that happening? Why is that happening there? And when I look at problems that we've had with law enforcement in other cities and counties, and I go, shame on them, to law enforcement, for not having a relationship with their community. So, our people here in Richland County look at that and go, why haven't you done what we've done? Why haven't you, built relationships? Why haven't you talked with people? And so we go, why didn't you do that? Of course, there's some that just don't like cops. We have to remember that, there's always going to be a certain segment that's just, regardless, they're not going to like law enforcement. By and large, we see so much support here in Richland County from our community. And, I get a whole lot more attaboys and you're doing a good job and continuing what you're doing than I get that, you're doing the wrong thing. But while I tell our people in the community, we're good here, we do a good job, we can always do better. You should never be satisfied. You should always be striving to improve everything that you do. And that's what we're doing now. We're doing a lot of self-looking at each other and what we do and talking amongst our deputies and saying, okay, what can we improve on? What can we do better? What better training can we get? So, and you need to do that every day. Law enforcement is a changing profession in that it changes every single day. And if you're doing the same thing today that you did last week, then you're a week behind.
And I also have to tell you, I agree with that. Just from a personal and a professional perspective, that's kind of one of the common threads that I've always had is what we're doing now might be good, but there's always a way for us to do it better. And
Correct.
just continuing to strive for, improvements, whether it is in your personal life, whether it's in the professional life. And here tonight, we're talking about, how that relates into law enforcement. So, with the improvements and the self-reflection that's going on right now, bringing that in, tying that in with some of the more recent incidents of racial violence and that we've seen across the country, how have those incidences impacted community relationships with our police force, with our police department?
Well, again, it depends on where you're at. If you're in some of these cities that, there's continuously rioting and protesting is fine. Our country is built on protests. So, we support protests. We protect protesters. It's the rioters. It's when property is damaged and people are hurt. That is a big difference. And, again, people in Richland County, I think, are different, and we're better than that and because of relationships that we've got. But, I'm disappointed in a lot of law enforcement agencies that do just enough to get by. And, one of the things I preach all the time when I talk to young people and adults and deputies is that, set your goals, set your standards to the highest. You can't be perfect. That doesn't mean you can't try to be perfect. And don't be satisfied with just showing up and just doing enough to get by. And that should be in your personal life and your professional life. So we have standards of excellence here that we set, and we expect everybody to achieve those. And I think our citizens expect that too. If you call for a deputy, you just don't want a so-so deputy. You want the best deputy in the world to show up, the best trained, best equipped, and one with the best mind and heart. And that's what we train. And so I say shame on those communities and shame on those law enforcement agencies who don't set those standards high. The citizens should hold us to a high standard too. I think that's what the community should do, is hold us to a high standard. And then when we're not reaching that, then, question why. And I see that happening now. I see there's a lot of questioning of citizens of, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you working with us? Why don't you have body cameras? Why don't you have policies in place that can prevent something from happening like happened in Minneapolis? Those questions should be asked, and I welcome those questions.
And we'll transition right into maybe you can expound on that a little bit more with how can citizens work with the police to promote those healthy relationships within our communities?
Well, be part of what we do. And when I say that, every community should have a community organization, neighborhood crime watch, whatever you want to call it, just where the neighbors get together and people talk and look out for each other. And you should welcome law enforcement to be part of that. That's one of the things that we do in Richland County is we have a community action team. We call them CAT team deputies. And their main responsibility is their assigned areas and go in those communities and help that community develop a crime watch group or a neighborhood association. And then we're part of it. It belongs to that community, but we're part of it. That way we get to know each other. Again, building that relationship, communicating, I think is very key. So citizens should be part of everything that law enforcement do. And I tell cops, we work for the citizens. Why shouldn't we listen to them? That's our job. We should listen to them and not be just that one that's out here enforcing a law. And one thing that we've done is we've put on the back of all our police cars is peace officer. Just that 2 words, peace officer. Now they're going on our uniforms, and it's still got deputy sheriff, but it has peace officer. Our job is to keep the peace. And that doesn't mean arresting people all the time. It means just keeping the peace. And there's so many things you can do working with the community just to keep the peace.
And well, this is going right on in with you mentioned the community action team. What are some other programs or services, things of that nature, that demonstrate how police are actually supporting our communities through those types of programs and services?
And probably one of the biggest things is what we do with our kids. I have 97 school resource officers in Richland County. We have a school resource officer assigned to every school. and they build relationships with young people every day. But a simple thing is what we call High Five Friday. Every Friday, we're at a different elementary school, and the deputies there at the car rider line, at the bus line. And as the kids get off, we got music playing, the deputies are dancing, and they're giving them a high five. And that is showing us in a light that's where something bad is not happening. And you know, it's something little bit to a young child, just knowing, okay, this is a police officer, this is a deputy, and we're having fun, and I can talk to them, and we can dance with them. That, again, that's building that relationship with them. So that, and then all the way to the opposite spectrum is what our senior citizens. We have our Project Hope, Help Our Precious Elderly, where we go out and visit our senior citizens. Probably have 700 senior citizens that we call them. We go by and check on them. Again, you know, and that's crime prevention, because you're preventing them from being a victim of a crime. But you're building that relationship. You're letting them know that their sheriff's department loves them. They care for them. So you're helping them. So, you know, that's the opposite end of the spectrum, from young kids all the way to our seniors. There's programs you can do that, again, you're building that relationship. You strengthen that relationship. You're getting to know each other.
And so the flip side of that, how can communities, what can we as citizens and as our community, what can we do to support local police?
Well, again, reach out. You know, I expect our deputies to go and reach out to the communities. I don't think it's so much the community's responsibility as it is ours as a law enforcement agency. And Richland County is very diverse. We have everything here. So we need to build relationships with every aspect of our community, and it's our job to go there and be them. I just ask the community to welcome us. You know, allow us to come in and sit down and talk with them and listen to them and get to know them. And so I think once the community does that and sees that we're making that effort, then you're going to have cooperation on both ends. And, you know, Neighborhood Watch is nothing but a bunch of organized, nosy neighbors, and that look out for each other. And it's real simple. And so we do that. We can work very, you know, most people in the community, they don't want crime. They want safety. They want their children to be able to go to schools. They want to be able to sit on their porch or go for a walk. So majority of people know that we need law enforcement. You know, and there's a lot of talk today about defunding police, getting rid of law enforcement. Well, I say, okay, if there's no more law enforcement at 2 o'clock in the morning and somebody's breaking in your house to rob or murder you, who are you going to call, a plumber? No, you want law enforcement. So sometimes that love-hate relationship exists. You love us when you need us and maybe hate us when you don't. But most people are very supportive of law enforcement because they know it's something that's necessary out in our community.
Well, I have to tell you, just from my own perspective, if we had High Five Fridays as I walked into my job every day with a police officer, you know, that would be pretty cool. It would, you know, it would make my day a little bit. So maybe that's something we can put onto the list of potential changes or upgrades, is maybe we can have them rotate through some of the different businesses and offices.
And we've actually talked about that and doing that, and probably in the next year or so, we're going to look at that and expand it, because that is, we're booked for the whole year. When school was going on before the virus hit, we were booked for the entire year. The elementary schools just beg us to come. The parents love it. The kids love it. So, you know, that is something that we've discussed about going to maybe a large businesses, as people come in the morning, just having a little bit of music going on and a little bit of High Five Friday, just brighten your day. But maybe instead of doing it on Fridays, we talked about doing it on Mondays, because people don't want to work on Mondays. So, you know, start your week off in a positive way by just, you know, a high five on Monday.
I think that's the ticket. Definitely starting the week off right, for sure. And in line with that, as we're talking about different changes, and I know that you are very active in really digging in and seeing what changes are needed, constantly evaluating, you know, how you operate the department, what training, you know, your officers are getting. What kind of changes, in your opinion, do you think need to be made in order to bring a sense of unity into a community, whether it's here in Richland County, or even as you've looked around at some of the things that are happening in other communities across the country? what changes do you think need to be made? I mean, obviously there's a cry to defund the police. I'll have to say I agree with you. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm not calling my nosy neighbor. I'm going to dial 911, and I expect Richland County to show up and protect and serve. But what kind of changes do you think are needed for us to really be able to see our communities and our police officers come together?
More transparency. I think law enforcement's got to be a lot more transparent, and the citizens need to have a voice in what their police department or sheriff's department's doing. Over 20 years ago, I started a citizens advisory council. Now, I can't meet with all 450,000 people who live in Richland County, but I can meet with a smaller group that represents different sections of our diverse community. So we started a Citizens Advisory Council as total access to everything we do, our policies and procedures, when we have critical incidents, everything that we do, they have access to it, and they have a voice. So instead of the 450,000 people having a voice, you have 20-something people who now represent them. And they come in and they give us the citizens' perspective on everything that we do, all the way down to hiring. When a deputy is, somebody's applying to be a deputy, they have to go in front of an interview board, and it's 7 people. 5 people are deputies from the sheriff's department. 2 are from our Citizens Advisory Council. They get an equal vote on who gets hired here, so they're able to have the citizens' voice. And so we need to do more of that. Allowing citizens to see what we do and why we do it. Again, that open line of communication. So, but being more transparent, I think that's one of the very keys to building a good relationship with the community, is being transparent about what we do and why we do it.
And do you think, have you had any communication with any of your counterparts across the country as far as some of the things that they may be looking into, or even have you noticed anyone else who has a best practice that you may be considering bringing into Richland County?
Well, I don't like to reinvent the wheel, so yes, I do look around, and I'm part of some major organizations in the United States with law enforcement, and we do talk. We have lots of conversations about what we do good in Richland County, and then I'll look at what somebody else may be doing somewhere else. So we do share those ideas, and I guess fortunately for us, a lot of them tend to copy what we do. And which I'm proud of, and I'm glad that people look at what we do and try to do the same thing, because they see that we are successful. But we do. We share a lot of ideas. I'm on the board of directors for the major county sheriffs of America, which is your largest sheriff's departments in the United States. And so we talk and we say, okay, well, what are you doing successful in California? What are you doing in Florida? And so we share those ideas. But right now, one of the biggest things that we're sharing is transparency. How can we be more transparent? How can we let the community know what we're doing? And body cameras are one of them. Having Citizens Advisory Council, having the citizens have a voice in what you're doing. That to me is so huge.
And I think it's pretty awesome for our viewers who are watching, here in South Carolina, who are familiar with Richland County. I will say it's very nice to know that Richland County is kind of seen as the gold standard, that there are a lot of folks across the country who are looking at what's being done here and taking that to implement, in their communities. So that makes me proud as a South Carolina native, a Richland County native. And for our viewers who are not from South Carolina watching, I will make sure that bug is dropped in their ear, that if they're looking for some good ideas and looking for best practices, that they certainly can look to Richland County to get some thoughts and ideas there. Well, Sheriff Lott, I want to thank you again for your time, for being here with me and having this conversation. It is so important for us to have open lines of communication, whether that is, again, personal, professional, but here in this light, I think even more important right now with the unrest that we have across our country, for us to have that transparency and the communication with our law enforcement. So is there anything, as we're wrapping up, are there any final thoughts that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, I'll give you our website, which is rcsd.net, initials of the Richland County Sheriff's Department.net. the programs we talked about and other programs are on our website. I encourage people to go look at them and then see what your agency where you live, if they're doing some of those or if they're not. And then maybe recommend, a chief or sheriff would recommend someone to call them up and say, hey, why don't you look at this agency, what they're doing. So go to our website, look at the programs. But again, communications, and that's with your family, with your kids. Like I said, I have a 16-year-old and understand communications with a teenager. But understand that just younger generation now wants their voice to be heard. We need to listen to that voice. We just don't need to ignore it and say, well, they're just young people. They don't know what they're talking about. They do. Let's listen to them.
Absolutely. Well, I want to, in closing, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight for part 3 of our 4-part communication series entitled Transformation Through Communication, Conversations with a Woman's Best Friend. I hope you'll join us all again tomorrow night as we wrap up our series with Pastor Jackie Utley and our conversation on faith leaders. Take care.